A young man identifies himself as a wolf, so his family admits him to a center where he will meet other people who suffer from the same condition. Today on Cinema Recapped, I'll show you Wolf. The movie starts with a boy named Jacob who's wandering through the forest, but in a very peculiar way, since he's barely wearing clothes and behaves like a wolf. This happens because in this world there's a strange disease called species dysphoria, which makes people frequently believe they're animals. In Jacob's case, he feels that he's a wolf and behaves like one. We see Jacob's parents say goodbye to him since they've interned him in a place that receives people with species dysphoria to try and cure them and remove those behaviors. During his first session at the clinic, Jacob feels uncomfortable since he's surrounded by strange people. They all introduce themselves. He meets Dr. Angela, who is the local psychologist. He also meets Rufus, who thinks he's a German shepherd, and Judith, who has a tendency to behave like a bird and wears a costume that makes her look like one. He also meets Jeremy, who believes he's a squirrel. This last one begins to cry since he wants to be a rodent, while the doctor tries to calm him down. Shortly thereafter, we see them resting in a room that has several things for them to enjoy. Rufus approaches Jacob and tells him that they're a family, since they both identify themselves as herd animals. At the same time, a man starts to bother a boy. Rufus tells Jacob that he's about to leave since he's improved a lot, and that the man is bothering the boy to cure him, so they must not intervene. At mealtime, Rufus approaches Jacob again and tells him that, since he is new, he is allowed to eat animal food, and he also asks him to pet him, but Jacob just ignores him. Rufus feels annoyed and barks at Jacob a little. Then he starts eating the animal food. The doctor quickly picks him up and tells him that she can't believe he's doing that, since he had improved a lot. Later they take Jacob, Rufus, and Jeremy for a walk, as they'll have a little session with Dr. Mann, who demands Jeremy climb a tree like the squirrel he is, but tells him to do it with his claws like a real rodent. However, the boy breaks one of his nails, so they take him away to heal him. The doctor stays with Jacob, telling him that if he is a wolf, he must walk on 4 legs, and holds him to the ground to do so. Also, he tells him to howl, but Jacob says that he does not want to be a wolf. Dr. Mann tells him not to tell lies and demands that he howl like the animal he is, but Jacob doesn't obey. So the man congratulates him for putting up with it and not behaving like an animal. The next day, Dr. Mann sits Jacob in front of another girl. At the same time, he shows them a diary that he stole from Jacob, where he says that he's a wolf in a human body, so he knows that Jacob still believes he's a canine, but does not want to express it in front of others. The doctor whispers not to worry, because it'll help him stop having those thoughts about himself, while we see that the boy is very thoughtful about it. That night, Jacob is restless and looks out a window while trying not to howl. He begins to walk in hopes of distraction, but he ends up posed on all 4s, as if to howl. He reaches a window, opens it, and starts to howl, and we notice that he begins to feel much better for freeing himself that way. At the same time, another girl arrives, behaving like a feline, and tells him to shut up or they'll find him. Shortly after, a guard enters. Both teenagers have to hide. The girl takes Jacob outside, where he vents by howling loudly. The next day, the patient's relatives go to visit them, and Jeremy's mother gets upset with Dr. Mann since he's made her son get injured by climbing that tree. The doctor quickly convinces her that these methods do not compare to the cruelty that will happen outside if they're not fully cured, so he takes her to talk in private. Later, while they're in session, some boys with horse masks throw the body of a dog at them while they call them freaks. They quickly evacuate while the doctor tries to catch the criminals. Jacob takes the dog in his hands. The feline girl arrives, and together they take the body outside, dig a hole, and leave it inside, since they felt bad about what happened to the poor little animal. That night, Jacob and the girl talk about their lives. We find out that the feline has lived there since she was a little girl. Jacob also tells his story, saying that it's really hard living like this, and they both comfort each other. The next day, Dr. Mann wants Judith to jump out a window and fly since she thinks she's a parrot. The girl screams, scared, since she knows that she could get hurt, even though she insists she's a bird. The doctor keeps pressing her even more to jump and fly, breaking her spirit. The desperate girl screams that she's a human girl, and they leave her alone. The doctor feels comforted since he's advanced a little with her. At night, Jacob begins to walk through the corridors on all 4s. He runs into the feline girl, and they leave the place calmly. On the roof, they begin to play. but after a few minutes the feline tells him to stop, since Jacob was playing very rough. The next day, the doctor forces them to smile and laugh aloud to highlight that human side they still have inside, although it's very difficult for them to do so. Later, they start bothering the boy again, so this time Jacob can't stand it and goes to help. But his animal instinct wakes up, growling at the boy. Then he looks at the little boy as if he were his prey, so the doctor stops him and takes him away. In Dr. Mann's office, Jacob is warned that no other behavior like that will be accepted, and there will be serious consequences, saying that his parents are aware of everything. The next day is graduation, so several teenagers leave the place since they've been cured and can return to their normal lives with their parents. Later, the doctor takes Jacob to a wolf that's locked in a cage while asking him if he really wants to be like that pathetic and hairy beast, since men are the superior race in the world and can catch canines like that one for fun. Jacob only sees the sadness in the wolf's eyes. Then, when the doctor tries to take him away from the cage, Jacob clings to stay with the animal, and they both begin to howl, understanding each other. When the doctor sees this behavior, he quickly pulls Jacob away, while the wolf inside the cage howls. The doctor locks him in another cage, telling him that he's not a wolf, but a boy who's sick, and repeats this phrase over and over again. Later, the feline girl goes to his cell and tries to talk to him, but Jacob seems very affected, since he does not pay much attention to her. She lets him know that she was also kept locked up in that cage for a long time. At that moment, Jacob approaches her and they begin to smell each other closely and end up consoling each other by holding hands. The next day, the doctor takes Jacob to another cage in which there's a man who's behaving much like a lion. In the end, he could no longer become conscious as a human, so in his mind he stayed like an animal forever. The doctor tells Jacob that he'll let him sleep in his room like the others, but he has to consider what happened to that man and be careful about his wolf instincts, since he might never be the same again, and he would forget his family, and they would forget him. That night, Jacob dreams of being free in the forest and rejoicing among the earth. Then he wakes up and goes to the roof, where he drinks water from the floor. The doctor arrives, saying that he warned him and he did not listen, so he yells at him to go back to his room. Jacob is very upset, so the more they yell at him, the more he gets furious, and from one moment to another he starts to growl and ends up attacking the doctor. The cat girl arrives and tells him to calm down, so he leaves the doctor and they go back inside. The next day, the doctor takes Jacob back to the cage, but this time with a chain and gag, so that he doesn't hurt anyone else. Later, Rufus' relatives arrive, bringing him back since he really wasn't behaving like a normal person. They leave him hospitalized again, while he urinates in his pants. The parents leave, and when the doctor sees they're left alone, he begins to mistreat Rufus, telling him that he misbehaved, while the feline girl listens to everything and is very sad for Rufus. That night, the girl puts on makeup to look more like a cat. Then she goes to where Jacob is, takes off her clothes in front of him, and they start touching each other. The next day, Jacob tells the girl that they have to escape from that place. At the same time, Dr. Angela enters and gets scared when she sees them together, so he takes the feline girl away, while the boy remains upset in his cage. Later, the other patients are in a dance session with the doctor, while Dr. Mann takes the opportunity to punish Jacob with electricity, so he regrets what he's done. Jacob's screams reach the other teenagers, and they get upset and start running away from the doctor. More staff arrive to contain them, but they defend themselves as best they can. Dr. Mann comes out and reassures them all, making fun of each of their conditions, and all the teenagers end up locked in cages. Later, the feline girl steals the keys to the cages and goes to rescue Jacob. They leave the facilities, although the girl regrets it and decides to stay, since she's afraid to walk outside, and asks Jacob to do the same. The alarm sounds in the facility, and Jacob decides to run away alone. We see the boy howling very happily to be free, as prompted by his animal instinct. The end. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe to continue receiving recaps of the best drama and horror movies. Thanks for watching.